Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Finding Joy in Your Vestibular Migraine Journey. I'm Marissa, and I'm here with my co-host Joy, and we have someone very special today joining us, David Morrill from VeDA, vestibular.org, and the Vestibular Disorders Association. David, we are just so happy and grateful that you came on with us today. And this is something Joy and I have wanted to do since we started the series, just to raise more awareness for the vestibular community and all of us around. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Joy, and thank you, Marissa.
Thank you. Yeah. Would you explain a little bit about how VeDA was founded?
Sure. So many years ago, in the West Coast near Portland, or Oregon, or in that area, people had this disorder, and there wasn't, as you probably everybody is aware, there wasn't a lot of information about it. A lot of professionals didn't know anything about it. So it actually began as a support group in that area. People that had, and I don't even know if they knew what they had at that time. It was, probably something that just saying they were dizzy, a dizzy support group. But yeah, it started as a support group, and it kind of morphed into this nonprofit organization that it is today.
Wow. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit, David, about your journey, kind of how you got started with VeDA?
Sure. Yeah. And my journey is a real convoluted, messy kind of thing. So I'll try to abbreviate it a little bit, but
Sure.
and I'll tell you how I got started. So for the people that don't know me, about 8 years ago, I suffered a stroke in my cerebellum. And when I was recovering from a stroke, the therapists were having a hard time understanding how to get me better. So my main problem after my stroke was dizziness and balance problems, because I had damage in my cerebellum. So that kind of makes sense. But the therapists were trying to treat me as a regular stroke patient. So they're thinking maybe, my legs weren't weak enough, my arms. I was doing a lot of the bicycle things and weights, and that really wasn't my problem. It was actually being able to stand up. To fast forward a little bit, I did find a therapist that just kind of listened to me and what I needed. And I told him, if I can get my balance back, then I will feel a lot better after this, from the stroke symptoms. So this therapist listened to what I had to say and kind of just worked on balance. They did a lot of the classic exercises that everybody does today, VRT exercises, and a lot of balance challenging exercises. So once I got better, I also knew that there was a kind of a gap, I think, in information, because a lot of my doctors didn't understand why I was dizzy. They didn't understand a lot about dizziness or balance issues. So I thought, maybe there's an opportunity for me to make people aware of this. And the way I found VeDA mostly was because with my stroke, and I had a stroke that was kind of really rare, a cerebellum stroke that it hit in a specific place. Well, what's really strange about my story is I was taken to the local ER because I had sudden onset of dizziness. So I went to the ER, and they kind of looked at me and said, you have vertigo. You can go home and you'll be better in a couple days. Well, I was actually having a stroke. So you probably know how that story ended. 2 days later, I ended up back in the ER, and they actually correctly diagnosed me for a stroke. So I thought, okay, yeah, and physicians make mistakes, and I said, okay, it was a mistake, and it's okay. The weird twist in this story is my brother, who is 18 months older than I am, had the same exact stroke that I had in the same place, and he was taken to a different ER in our area, and they were going to do the same treatment that they were going to do me. They were going to release him with vertigo. My family stepped in and said, this sounds a lot like my brother's symptoms. Can we get some imaging? Because that's the only way to tell if you're having a stroke versus inner ear, is if you take an MRI or a CAT scan to look for a stroke or in your brain. They actually did do imaging and did diagnosed him with a stroke that day, and they gave him the correct medications. So once he recovered from that, he was perfectly fine with no lasting impressions. So as I was recovering, I kind of thought to myself, so that's two mistakes just in my family so this must be a phenomenon that's happening to more than just my brother and I. So I kind of reached out and did some research, Google and all that stuff. And I found a doctor that was actually researching this phenomenon, Dr. David Newman Token. He's a neurologist that teaches neurology at Johns Hopkins University in Maryland, in Baltimore. And I kind of just reached out to him, emailed him, and I never thought he'd get back to me. He was a high-level professor, probably very busy. I was just writing to him and telling him what happened with my story. And within like an hour or so, I had a phone call and we talked for about an hour. He wanted me to partner with him as a patient advocate because he was fighting for the same phenomenon. He said, a lot of people every year go into the ER. What they think are having a inner ear attack, but it's sometimes a stroke or a brain attack. So, usually the ones that are having a stroke don't turn out very well because, as you can imagine, some people die, other people are left impaired like I was. So he's kind of working with physicians to try to understand this and try to prevent it. So when I first got in touch with him, he said, you need to get in touch with this organization. It's called VeDA. They do a lot of things with the vestibular thing, and I think you could be helpful as an advocate with them. So I reached out to the executive director, which is Cynthia Ryan. She still is the director. And we had a long conversation as well. And I said, I want to volunteer, I want to help. Because I know 2 people in my family were affected, and I know there's millions others that are like that. So that's kind of how I got started. And then I just kind of like dove into volunteerism, and it exploded. Here I am 8 years later, and I'm still going strong.
That's great. And yeah, that was one of our questions of how did you get started? And you found VeDA. And what is your role currently with VeDA? We know you well, but those other ones know.
So I've had it, and I always tell people when I talk to them, I have a lot of hats with VeDA. I've done almost every aspect of the vestibular world. Most of you guys know that I have a Facebook support group, which we just recently celebrated. I don't even celebrate, but we have 20,000 members now on a group that started with 300 when we first started it many years back. So I've done that in many committees, but currently I'm the community support coordinator. And basically it's a fancy name for every single volunteer that wants to volunteer for VeDA. I will talk with them and interview them and try to find what is their best fit in our organization. Some people want to come to be ambassadors, talk about their disorders. Other people are writers. They like to write things we either have professional members that write things for professional members, or we have patient stories, because we feel that a lot of times when we're talking about vestibular disorders, the patients don't understand a lot of the clinical stuff. But if we can tell somebody's story, like my story, about what happened to my family and what happened to me, it seems to hit more at home with people, and they understand a little bit more about vestibular disorders instead of trying to do it clinically and say, this is why they have vestibular disorder. So my job with the as the community support coordinator is to not only help the volunteers that are coming into our organization, but I also support those volunteers. So for instance, as you guys know me, because you both are ambassadors, I am the ambassador chairperson. So I support all the ambassadors in their missions. I'm also in charge of all VeDA support groups, whether they're online or in person. So if somebody wants to start a support group, or they want either online or in person, I help them along the way. I give them, resources that we have at VeDA. I help them. I can personally attend by a Zoom meeting like this with them, or I just give them suggestions on how to get it started. So I do a lot of things like that. Anything that has to do with a volunteer and their initial contact with VeDA. That's kind of what I do with VeDA as a community support coordinator. And I love my job. I talk to people all over the world. I just talked with somebody the other day in India because we have an ambassador that's joining us very shortly that's from India. And it's great to talk. And we have a couple that just recently came on from South Africa. So
Oh, wow.
never in my wildest dream would I think I'd be talking to people around the world, but we have one common problem. We're all dizzy. We all have balance problems. So I think that transcends all languages. But what we're trying to do is get as many different speaking languages involved with VeDA so that we can kind of translate our information and give it to other people. We've just got in with people with France in France for French speaking, and we're doing Spain also for Spanish speaking. We are just starting with people of India and Hindi. So we're hoping to do many more languages as we move forward.
Oh, that's just so exciting to hear all that. And
Yeah.
wow. And I know, you do so much. And that was some of our questions was about the difference between volunteer and ambassador role, which you kind of explained. So that's good. Can you tell us a little bit about the Rebalance series that you've been part of?
I sure can. Yeah. I'm very proud of that series. I was very uncomfortable. I didn't think that I don't mind. I'm a good speaker. I speak well at places, but when you record yourself, sometimes it's, and you kind of review it, it's different. But Kimberly Warner, who is the one that does the editing of it, she was very, encouraging to us all. And she helped us along the way. She gave us tips on how to record, and take a break and do that. So I love that series because it showed so many different people from so many different backgrounds and so many different vestibular disorders, but we were finishing people's sentences and we've never met these people in person. And sometimes it's the first time we've seen them. So in the videos, we were saying the same thing. So it goes along with what we all say. We're all kind of speaking in one voice, and hopefully people will hear that one voice and get involved. So it was very joyful doing it, and we're hoping to keep it going. We've had a couple of reboots where we've talked a little bit and had some series like that. But I think the series overall was very enjoying for me and very rewarding. So I like doing it.
Yeah, I enjoyed the series because if I'm feeling down, I can just watch one of those and I have someone to relate to. The first time I watched one, I think it was the body rebalance, and halfway through it hit me. I was like, whew, tears, it just hit me so hard. And then they bring you to hope at the end of the series, at the end of the video. And I just love those. And so that's one of the resources that you can find on YouTube. You can find those. What are some of the other online resources? If someone goes to vestibular.org, what other online resources do you have on the website for people?
Yeah, so vestibular.org has a lot of information, and anybody that is just starting in a journey or even has had this journey for a while, I always suggest vestibular.org is a perfect place to start. There's a lot of information, and what it does is it breaks down your disorders, in different segments. So if you think, even though a lot of us don't know a specific diagnosis, it can give you a lot of clues to maybe what your diagnosis is. It'll have all the disorders broken down, and professional, doctors and professors have written this. We have it, all the information that goes on this is peer reviewed by professionals. So you can find a lot of articles about your particular disorder. And a lot of the stuff you can find, people go there is to find a support group. So, if you're in a particular area of the country and you're looking for a support group, you can go on there and search that area and look for a support group. I'll talk a little bit about support groups while I'm right here. We kind of lost a lot of momentum and a lot of support groups when we had COVID. Some of them switched to the online format like this. Some of them just didn't keep going. They kind of shut down. But what we're seeing now, which is very nice to see, is a renaissance of in-person support groups. I've had at least 4 or 5 applications in the past 3 to 6 months of people wanting to start in-person support groups in different areas of the country.
Wow.
So, that's very encouraging, because obviously the more groups we have out there, the more people we can help. We do have, which we started an online support group, which I run one of those support groups. We started that actually before COVID, because it was an idea that happened because I had run an in-person support group, but what I found was I was only able to reach a limited amount of people that were in my geographic area. And even in that geographic area, there are a lot of times, if you're a vestibular patient, you can't drive or you can't get there. Nobody gives you a ride. There's so many barriers to an in-person support group. We thought that we would try, the online group even well before the COVID situation hit. And we started them at that point. And they started to actually really blossom because people can sit in the comfort of their home at different hours based on when they're available, and they could come online for an hour worth of support a month and stuff like that. So in addition to support groups on that, there's a lot of information to find support. You can call there's an 800 number there that will put you through with a person during their regular business hours that you can speak with somebody. We have a lot of volunteers out there that we call peer-to-peer or one-on-one counseling, for instance, if somebody called in and said, I'm a stroke patient and I am struggling with my dizziness, is there anyone I can talk to that can, maybe give me, just either listen to me or give me some advice on which way I should be moving? And, that person would probably be me because I've experienced that. So it's a little bit more of a breakdown on particular people that have particular disorders, and they can talk one-on-one with their peers, and it's a good program to have. So those are just some of the things. There's many other things on that site, but vestibular.org, it's a great place to start. Even if you had this disorder for many years, it's a great place to revisit because we're always updating for the current medical information that's available. So.
Wow. Yeah, that's great to hear. I know there's so much on there still that I'm exploring on their website. Another question we had was, how can someone support VeDA? Whether it's a donation or what are some ways that they can support VeDA?
Yeah, and that's a great question. We always love to have the financial donations because if people that don't know, VeDA is a very small nonprofit. We have a very small office staff that works diligently to try to get as much information out there as possible. Financial assistance is always welcome, but also you can donate your skills, your ambassadors, people that are spreading awareness. We have one lady that she is, and we've been struggling to do this in our organization, is we were looking for somebody to help us with our onboarding of new volunteers because none of us are professionals in that area, but we actually had a volunteer that's a human resources specialist, and she has come on and she's helping us to get a program started for our onboarding and how to make a video and maybe get the right equipment. And so she's doing some human resources stuff for me. So if you have a talent, writing, a lot of people are good writers. I'm a horrible writer, so I always love people writing for my content. So I'm a public speaker, but I'm not a good writer. So we need, whatever you do in your professional life, it may be able to transform into a volunteer position. We're always looking for people that can do administrative tasks, because a lot of times, like I said, we have a very small staff in office, and in order to take care of all of our patients, sometimes volunteers are needed to help with these small tasks. For instance, we have a program where volunteers will call new donors, people that have donated to our organization, and it's a volunteer that's doing that. Usually it's a patient. So little things like that, I think, go a long ways to making the organization, very friendly and welcoming. So, if you have a talent, or even if you want to just help, we welcome all volunteers.
Well, thank you. And I will put the VeDA website is linked into the YouTube page as well. If you go to channels, you'll find the YouTube channel. And in this video, I will link in the description the link to VeDA. And I would encourage anyone to go on there. There is so much information. You know, I am still playing around with the website. I mean, it's just a lot. You can, if you want a t-shirt, you can buy a t-shirt. The donation link is in there and it tells the different ways you can donate. I think I saw yesterday. So I'll definitely link that so everybody can have a quick reference to that. And if you go to the YouTube, you can find the Rebalance series. And, you know, you talk about the support group. Well, that's how Marissa and I met at a VeDA support group. So
Yes.
it has just popped off, and we both are members of the Facebook group, which we love. That has been helpful. So through your journey, through all you've went through, kind of what was the thing that's helped you the most through your journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. People ask me that a lot. And I think when I initially started, you know, I was kind of feeling sorry for myself. When I had my stroke, I was 52 years old. I had a plan for retirement. I had a plan for our, you know, our family. Our kids were all grown, just starting to have grandchildren. And then of course the stroke hit, and you know, I was down for probably 4 or 5 years where I really couldn't do a lot. So during those years, I put a lot of my energy into volunteering. And if I look back at it, because I was doing a lot with my brain and keeping it active and healthy, and actually thinking of others instead of, you know, thinking of my problems, I think it helped me on my road to recovery a little bit more, because I was keeping my brain active, and that's what I really needed to do after my condition. And I would challenge all vestibular people to just, you know, if you having memory issues, if you're having cognitive issues, to keep challenging your brain, keep challenging things that you can do, because it does come back a lot of times. You know, even with a stroke, I have brain damage, but they said, you know, you need to work hard and you're going to get some function back. And that's what I did. I worked hard. It doesn't come. And I always tell people, I know from the support groups, a lot of times people are like, you know, they want to have a day or a time when this is done. Because a lot of times you go to the doctor and you have a cold or a flu, and they say, oh yeah, take this medication and you should be better in a week, right? And we all want to know that, you know, when we get a vestibular disorder, we're like, okay, I'm going to do what you say, but when am I going to get better? And as we all know, really nobody can tell us that. But I always tell people to always work hard and never give up, because I have talked with countless people that have, you know, recovered from a vestibular disorder and are leading very active lives. I had a stroke and I am leading a very active life. And it's not always the life that you are planning, but somebody else may be planning my life, because that's what I realized is like, I just need to let it go and follow this path that I'm on, because, you know, I was concentrating on, you know, my retirement's all messed up, and I don't know, you know, when I'm going to retire and what's going to happen. Am I going to go back to work full time? But I kind of just let it, you know, happen organically. And then I kind of just saw a light where I was supposed to be going, and somebody else was leading that. It wasn't me. But once I let that other piece of my life, it kind of drifted this way. So I'm very thankful, because I have many more years, hopefully, to spend with my family and my grandchildren. So, you know, that's a positive. So I always look at the positive side, and it's sometimes hard to do with this types of you know, disorders. It's really hard to look at the positive side, but I always try to be positive with everybody. If I on my Facebook group, you'll see that on my when I do support groups, the same thing. You know, it's hard sometimes when people first come up with this disorder to be positive, but we always try to find one thing in their life that's positive at this time. And I think it helps.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I think it definitely does. That's so amazing. I love your story and just how you've turned, you know, the negative into the positive. And I think that what you said just about thinking positive and finding the positive in your life, I know that has helped me as well a lot with my healing. So that's so important that people know that out there. So I'm glad you said all that. So Well,
Yeah.
this has been just so great, David. I'm so happy. We're so happy that you could come on today with us. And I know Joy said she's going to link all that information.
Yeah.
Right, Joy?
Yeah, it'll be linked on our channel, and it'll be linked in the description of this video.
Great. And I want to thank both of you very much for inviting me to this. You know, I always welcome the chance to talk about vestibular disorders and how people can be helped. And you know, VeDA is a big part of that. It was a big part of me. And you know, I appreciate you ladies for your efforts that you're doing, not only on this podcast, but also as ambassadors. I know you guys are out there working hard, promoting our disorders, and that's what I always tell people. Education is the key to this disorder, and the more people we have out there talking about it, the more people will know about it, and they'll understand us a little bit more. So it's like a grassroots, one person at a time thing.
Yeah.
But I've been with this 8 years, and I've seen a lot of improvement in 8 years. It's a slow improvement, but just like vestibular disorders, it's a slow moving process. Thank you, ladies.
Yes,
Well, thank you so much, David.
Yes, we appreciate it. And I'll see you at our next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.